Now, Rolex traditionally wouldn't do limited editions. They'd done one recently for the Special Air Service. So I wrote a long letter to Rolex. And from that, it led to a meeting. And then all of a sudden, they'd agreed to do it. And it says, "Fear God, honor the King," with an iconic picture of a Sea King helicopter. It was the deliverer of the troops to the front line. That's what we did. And number one, they're done in solid gold.
This is literally a priceless watch. It's impossible to value. Realistically, one of the rarest Rolexes in the world. This is a one of one. You're never going to see another one of these again. Rich, welcome to a moment of your time. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very
much. I really
much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
This is a really interesting episode compared to what we usually do, because I mean, we've done interviews with lots of dealers, but you are realistically the true private collector, the first one we've ever really sat down with. So please explain to our audience at home a little bit about yourself and really what got you into watches and why we're sat in a hangar today.
Right. Well, thanks very much for having me. So I'm Rich. I spent 21 years in the military as a pilot. I was Navy pilot first, then transferred to the Air Force. And so I spent my entire working career, shall we say, in aviation and flying, hence the environment, and hence the Tiger Moth behind us, because I've got a passion for aviation. Watches really came about and became a passion of mine from my father. So my dad used to literally bounce me on his knee, shall we say, with a gold day date that he bought in the Middle East, because he worked in the Middle East in the sort of 60s, 70s, and everybody used to just wear gold Rolexes if they were, to a penny. Yeah. And so that really got me and my brother fascinated about watches. And from then, really, it wasn't until I became an earner, joined the military, got my first military paycheck, that I then got into watches, and the journey just developed over the next 20 years of service in the military and beyond, because I've been out a number of years now, but that's what got me into watches. Yeah.
And over that time frame, realistically, you have gone on to build an incredible collection. And I mean, some of the watches that we're going to be looking at today, I think it's fair to say you actually own some of the rarest watches in the world, and that you've collected over the years.
Yeah.
But why don't we cast our minds right back to the very start and present to us the first watch that really gave you the bug and what really showed watches to you?
Right. It's twofold, really. We can talk. The first one that I ever bought, shall we say, is down to this Omega Seamaster.
Very nice.
Omega Seamaster. I joined the military in 1998, and that was at the the height when James Bond came on the scene, and he first started wearing the Seamaster. And I remember getting that first paycheck from the military. Joined, went through officer training with the Navy, and got this first paycheck.
Wow.
And it was almost as if the two matched. The price of that watch, I remember it was in a goldsmith shop in the Metro Centre in Gateshead. And it was almost as if how much I got paid matched to how much that Omega. And I was like, oh, it's fate. One has to marry the other. Yeah. And that was it. So I bought that. So that was kind of my first ever, heavy hitting watch purchase that I would call it.
And you made the right choice, because you went for the automatic version over the
automatic
quartz.
version, yeah. And still, I say I still wear it today. I will wear it today. I don't not wear it, but actually, it's a bit tight on my wrist. And I've never put another link back into it. So
well, I'm sure we can help with that if you need that doing for you. I'm sure we can do that. But that's cool. And I like the fact you went for the steel bezel option as well over the blue. I think that's a really cool choice, because I really like the militant feel of the steel bezel.
And it was quite interesting. So about the same time, my brother bought the same watch. So he got into watches, same reason as myself, and he's a really big Omega collector now. So roll on the years, I've transitioned through the likes of Rolex. We've got IWC, Pateks in there. Yeah. He's very much stuck with Omega, and if you look at his collection, it's as if he's just got a history of Omega. But he went for the blue bezel.
Okay.
And it's interesting, you look at it now, and I know people quite like the historical look, how it fades and things like that, but actually I really don't like that. I like the polished bezel that's got, and the look that's got, where his to me just looks like it could almost do with a refit. It doesn't age as well as potentially the bezels on Rolexes would age. I feel the bezel just doesn't look quite as well. So.
Yeah, they're very common to see with that sort of like ghosted bezel finish.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it works as well with the Omega as it does. You look at some of the patina and the ghosting of the Rolexes.
Well, I mean, it's a great place to start. It's a very, very good first watch, but there is something on the table that is really catching me out. That is a little bit older than everything that we've got here, and it's like that pocket watch there.
So this is a World War II Rolex pocket watch.
Wow.
And on its original chain as well.
Wow.
And on the rear of that, you'll see that it's still got the original arrow.
Yeah.
So the arrow which was stamped into issued items.
Arrow, yeah.
The broad arrow. And that's about having a NATO service number and etc. So, and this was, part of my kind of the historical fascination, not just with watches, anything that tells the time, but also the military and linking the two together. And again, that was part of my transition into this. And that today, I still wear that. So if ever I'm at a sort of a black tie function or wear a waistcoat, I'll still wear that. It keeps perfect time, as most Rolexes don't.
You can tell where your brand loyalties move these days. Yeah, I understand. But I mean, it looks, and I just like I say, the radium and that's painted on, and that really bulbous radium is really cool. That is absolutely stunning. So you've got probably one of the rarest Rolex pocket watches in the world. I'll move that over here with the box as well, so I'll pop that in front of me. You started off with an Omega. When did you start to get the bug for the brand beginning with R? Where did that really begin? So your dad had a day date, didn't he?
Yeah, so that, again, it's quite interesting because that was kind of 60s, 70s. I was born in Bahrain. He worked in oil out in the Middle East. So, and they used to, he used to just wear this Rolex. It was so, when we moved back to the UK, he used to wear it. It was too big on his wrist, rattled around like a true, Arab big gold watch, and that's how they used to wear them in the Middle East.
Was the bracelet all stretched like the old?
It is now. Yeah, you hold it on the side and it bends. About 90
the old
degrees.
day bracelet. Yeah.
But they used to talk about how in the 70s everybody else was wearing Daytonas. This word Daytona, and what it was, and that started me into this journey of Daytonas and the history behind Daytonas. So this was really one of my first. So it's a Daytona, not a stainless. It's a gold Daytona on a crocodile strap, and that was my first kind of jump into Rolexes and a Daytona, because kind of I'd heard that from an early age that he always wanted a Daytona, never bought one.
Bloody good place to start. I'm going to say it's not a bad watch, and I love these on the leather straps. They're just a little bit more understated. Yeah,
a little bit, exactly that, understated. And again, stainless at the time. I think I had this bug for gold, and you can probably see from my collection, I do love a gold watch. Don't get me wrong, I love a stainless watch as well, but it's kind of that balance I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, and they do with their leather strap Daytonas so well. This sort of era for Daytona is one of my favourites. So. Pre-ceramic, obviously, and when they started to go into their own in-house movements, that sort of early noughties era is pretty much my favourite sort of era for Rolex, excluding obviously the ones when they weren't so popular and the ones that everybody wants with the ridiculous price tags.
And that's it, isn't it?
But on the topic of Daytonas, you have a Daytona there that is completely unique that I think we need to cover, because that is incredible.
Yeah. So this is... I'm sure you've heard of the Artisans de Geneva, they are. And this is one of their modifications, shall we call it.
Yep.
So, I'm not into modifying watches. That's not, for me, a watch is perfect when it comes out the factory. That's why I follow the brand. They are perfect. Now, this was something that really caught my eye. What they're doing to watches, and they've done a number of Rolexes, they've done a number of... I don't really warm to what they're doing with the Pateks, but that's personal choice.
Yep.
What they're doing with Rolex, I think, is really unique. And this is a reference they called the honey green.
Okay.
So it was, obviously, Rolex came out with a yellow gold Daytona with the green face.
Yep.
Known as the John Mayer.
The John Mayer, the money Daytona,
And this was subtly different. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the John Mayer. I think it's a beautiful watch. But this really caught my eye, what Artisans had done with this. And They used a different green. They went for a historical. They removed some of the guards, for instance.
Yeah.
So they went for a very historical look. So a modern watch with a historical look. Now this was unique to me. It's got a green arrow on the rear, and that again was significant to me when I was leaving the military for one of the last units that I was part of.
Okay.
So it carries a kind of a historical and a personal story for me in general. I've always said I'll give that to my son when he's 18.
That's fantastic.
Whether he does get a 18, gold Daytona when he's 18, who knows? But I've said it.
So you've said it now. You've got to hold. I mean, for an 18th birthday present, it's a fantastic.
Maybe 21, or maybe when he gets married. But it's kind of that was the story.
You'll struggle to part with it. Is what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
But I think this is where watch modification. I mean, we like the original watches. That's something that we do really focus on. But when you come into the area of watch modification, watches that tell a story like that, so with the green hour on the back, that's when they become really cool. And if you're going to go and do it, a brand like Artisan is the perfect place to do it because they do it so well.
Yeah.
It's got quite a lot of vintage cues, in my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's what's really nice. I mean, the bezel is very, very vintage inspired, in my opinion. Like I said, the lack of crown guards, that sort of thing. But the green hour on the case back, I've been able to see the 4130 movement.
Yeah.
To be fair, I think Rolex have obviously listened because they've gone for an open case back
I was
this year.
I was just about to say that for me is what they were always missing. Now it's quite interesting because obviously the rotor on a Daytona, when it's in a traditional Daytona with that movement, is it's a stainless, quite an ugly looking rotor because they've never had to make it aesthetically pleasing. Unlike say your Pateks, where they've always got an open case back and the rotor is aesthetically pleasing. But when Artisans did that, they've obviously changed the rotor on it for that exact reason.
Yeah.
To make it look good, to make it stand out. And obviously now Rolex have followed suit. They've done exactly the same.
So on the topic of Rolexes, we have 2 GMT masters there, which to the naked eye, or from a distance, they just look like normal GMT masters. I know one is obviously solid gold, but these 2 pieces are really cool and incredibly rare. So let's talk about them next.
Yeah, so we've got 2, as you say, standard-looking GMTs. So my time in the military, and certainly the Navy, I spent the majority of it flying Sea King helicopters, so a big workhorse of the British military. And it had been in every conflict from the Falkland Islands, Iraq, and through its entire career. Since 1969 it came into service. So a big workhorse helicopter. And I flew that for many thousands of hours as a pilot. Anyway, these aircraft were going out of service 2017.
Yeah.
And we looked at doing a commemorative watch. So it was myself and a few colleagues who were into watches looked at doing a commemorative watch. The likes of Breitling and Bremont, who'd previously done a lot of military watches, we thought about approaching. Now, being a watch collector, I wasn't really into both Breitling and Bremont. Fantastic brands, but wasn't really my style. Wasn't following where I was going with my mind in collecting. So I said, why don't we approach Rolex? Why don't we look to see if Rolex will do a limited edition for us? Now, Rolex traditionally wouldn't do limited editions. They'd done one recently for the Special Air Service, for the SAS at that point. On an Explorer 2 was their first limited edition. So I wrote a long letter to Rolex about how the story behind the Sea King, how it had been in every conflict since it had come into service in 1969, how it served as a workhorse across not just the British military, but globally. And from that, it led to a meeting. And that meeting led to a project meeting. And then all of a sudden, they'd agreed to do it.
Wow.
So we agreed to do 123 watches. Now, it was 123 because that's how many aircraft at the time had been purchased for use. So we used 123 watches of a stainless steel GMT. The case back would be engraved with an iconic picture of a Sea King helicopter, and they'd all be numbered from 1 through to 123. And it says, "Fear God, honor the King," which was always a saying, obviously King being Sea King at that time, fear God, honor the King, because it was the deliverer of the troops to the front line. That's what we did. We delivered frontline troops to the front line. So fear God, honor the King.
Wow.
And they're dated, so from 1969 through to 2017 was the, I think it says since 1969.
Yeah, it does. Sea King since 1969.
So that one's number 69, so
nice.
Since 1969.
Yeah.
And that was the story. So when it was brilliant when they were coming out of Rolex. I picked them up in London. All of the cards were, numbered Sea King limited edition Rolex. So on the cards, that's what it states. And I picked them up from Bond Street, and they were done in reverse order. Now I would turn up in London with a day sack, and literally to collect the next batch. And I would put 10 GMTs in a day sack, just in their little small plastic.
The little plastic coffins.
Yeah, plastic coffins. The green boxes would have all been posted to me, and I then distributed them to the people who'd bought them. But I would put them in a day sack, and I would cut around London, from Bond Street down to the Tube, get back on the Tube to King's Cross. And again, that was in, I suppose, naivety, but it was, at the time, I suppose watch theft wasn't quite as ridiculous as it
wasn't
now
as
is.
publicised as it is now either. It's,
but that was it. So we worked down. Anyway, got to the last batch. The last batch being 10 down to 1. I'd had this one, and I was wearing the stainless one at that point. And I'd bought number 1 and number 2 as well. So number 2, my father bought, so he's still got number 2 sat in a safe. And number 1 was going to be mine, so 001/123. And I got there, we had this conversation, and out came number 1. And number 1 they'd done in solid gold. So not only 001 of the 123 was solid gold, it's in essence 1 of 1, because it's the only one in that series that was done in solid gold.
Wow.
And you know, I wore it. You can see by
it's been loved and enjoyed. 100%.
It's been worn, and you know, I love it. And there's a few of these now started to resurface onto the grey market.
Yeah.
A lot of people sell them with their logbooks. But one of the good things, they were purely for people who had a direct interest actually, who worked, either flew or engineers with the Sea King helicopter.
Yeah.
And it was a great period, and I loved doing it. It was a great project. It was amazing working with the design to get the design right on the rear.
But just for the audience at home, and something to consider is that, obviously, like you said, some of these have started appearing on the second-hand market now, and the price of these compared to the standard GMT is, of course, astronomically higher. But having the owner here of, realistically, one of the rarest Rolexes in the world. This is a 1 of 1. You're never going to see another one of these again, and you managed to own one. This is literally a priceless watch. It's impossible to value because there's none of them. It's incredible.
It ultimately is, yeah. It is what somebody is willing to pay. And they took it to Sotheby's, and that's exactly what Sotheby's said. They said, unfortunately, we would struggle to put a price on this because it would depend. If there were military collectors, military enthusiasts in the room, we have no idea where that would go.
Yeah. Well, they're never going to get another one. That's the beauty of it.
It appeared in a show. It's appeared in a number of watch shows for that exact reason. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and in the auction houses.
Yeah. In terms of collecting rare watches, I think this is pretty much a grail. It's very, very impressive. But I mean,
it carries a lot of significance to me as well.
And that's the beauty of it. There's a story behind it. It's not just, it's rare because there's only one, but it's rare because of, and you were behind the creation of all of them. Yeah. It's incredible.
But from that, I kind of met up with a few other military-based watch enthusiasts.
Okay.
And 2 of them, ex-Special Air Service members, we looked at Bremont.
Yeah.
Bremont, you know, fantastic brand, but about a significant portion of their revenue came from selling watches to the military, selling watches to specialist units or, you know, squadrons and things like that. Because in the military, we may well get a squadron watch. You know, when I was flying, quite often we would get a squadron watch. It's part of the brotherhood, shall we call it? 50 watches, you can all wear one in that unit. And we realized that there wasn't a single watch brand with true military roots. True military roots. There's a few, you know, fringe ones like your Sterlings, your Elliott Browns, but they still don't have true military roots. They're targeting the military market, but the founders aren't military. Yeah. So myself and these 2 chaps, both ex-Special Air Service fellas, founded a brand called Pagoda Watches.
Okay. And
Pagoda Watches, the name Pagoda is a nod to the counter-terrorism unit within the Special Air Service, which was Team Pagoda, famed for the likes of the Iranian embassy siege in 1982, and their historical roots go further back than that. And we founded, or one of the founders, I won't take credit for it, he founded Pagoda. I'm just part of that team. And we are now doing specialist watches for some of the very specialist units. Wow. The likes of the FBI in America, the likes of Delta Force, the likes of some of the other Special Air Service units. And with the phrase, worn by professionals, because ultimately it is a watch that is
worn by professionals.
Designed in Hereford, worn by professionals. To Geneva, a Swiss-made watch. And I'm very proud of my 100% sort of involvement with Pagoda.
It feels like a rugged, a proper tour watch, and that's where you could probably imagine. Obviously, this has been worn on the front lines, and it's made for people on the service.
And that's exactly incredible. You know, like you say, it's a tool watch. It is a tool watch to be worn in all conditions, and has been tested to the nth degree. And like I say, there's units now wearing that on operations globally, where other watches may nod to the military, but that actually is a true military watch, and founded by true. All 3 of us are.
And that's a beautiful story to see how you've come throughout your watch collecting journey to eventually be designing your own brand and being involved in a brand that is, like I said, the beauty of being a private collector and really reaching that point.
It's not just a project like the Sea King, it is ownership of a brand. They're called the TAC range, so TAC 1, 2 and 3. That's a TAC 2.
Yeah.
with the cream face.
Yes.
Yeah, it is just a good, solid.
Great lume. You need great lume on a military watch.
It's a good, solid tool watch.
Yeah, fantastic. So you started with Rolex and Omega, and then you pretty much completed collecting Rolex and had some of the rarest watches, and you even got involved in designing your own watch brand, but then you moved into the pinnacle. You moved into Patek. So how did that start, and where did you get the bug for Patek Philippe? Because you've got some incredible pieces there.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. It's a journey, and I think that's, for me, that is what watch collecting is. It is a journey. You know, you don't jump into, you know, irrelevant of how, if you're a watch collector, it's kind of irrelevant of money. And you know, you see a rich person might think, actually, I want a Patek watch, but that's not watch collecting. That's just
brand name.
A brand name. Yeah. Where for me it was a journey, and I think true watch collecting is whether you start with a, you know, I suppose we could go back before the Omega into kind of the Swatch watches, you know, I had as a kid, but that's still part of the journey, you know, and obviously now Swatch Omega, Swatch Blockman, you know, they're really rearing their heads, but that was still part of the journey. And for me, moving into the upper echelons is what's next, what is above that, what you know, from true, you know, watchmaking, horology, and finding that, it then goes to Patek. Now, I got introduced to Patek really on a visit to Geneva. Saw the you know, the Patek shops there, and they've got the Patek Museum, and you see the history. And then I remember going to a Patek exhibition in London. So didn't own them, but just started to warm and have a fascination with this brand. They brought the Grandmaster chime, and from then I had this fascination with Patek. Yeah. So I looked at, you know, as everybody does with like Rolex, you look at the sports models, you're immediately drawn to kind of the Nautiluses and because they are the sporting models. But then I started to delve a little bit deeper into the history of Patek and what it was all about. And that led me to my first jump in at the deep end, Patek, which is
it's a great place to start.
Yeah. So world time.
Yeah.
World time Patek. And maybe not the first one for a lot of people, you know, it's on a white gold case, world time complication, and it was beautiful. And I wore it as a daily watch. And just wearing it, you almost feel a little bit special. It's not as in your face as, you know, the likes of your Rolexes or things like that. It's a white gold, so it's very subtle.
What a first step. A lot of people will start with a Calatrava.
Yes.
Or with an ellipse and something quite lower down, but you really dived in head first and said, I'm here to play, and I respect the brand. And to be fair, that's what Patek want their private collectors to be. They want them to have the bug and appreciate the craftsmanship. So as a first step, I don't think you could have got it much better. This is one of my favourite Patek dials out there, alongside the Aquanaut. The guilloche finishing, which I believe is hand done on the dial, incredible. Absolutely beautiful. So once you'd taken that step, when did you next get the call? What was next?
I think I bought the dealer I've got a brilliant relationship with. I actually bought a Vacheron from after that. Yeah. Actually, the Vacheron may have come after my next Patek, but in 1921 Vacheron, same dealer sourced it, and again it's a 1921, and I bought that in 2021, and for me that was quite a significant time, the 100 years of the Vacheron 1921. And around that same time, I got the call for the heavy hitter, she would call it, of the 5980. Yeah. And you know, it is a Nautilus, but it's on a solid gold, rose gold. It's not everybody would wear something of that ilk, but you can see from the rest of the collection, I do like a gold watch. Now it has its occasions. That for me is a special occasion watch. Yeah. You know, that isn't I will wear pretty much anything else, including the other Patek I'll talk about in a minute, which I'll wear as a daily watch. I'll literally wear anything every day. Any of the gold Rolexes, even you know, even the white golds and the more subtle ones. But that I kind of do keep for a special occasion.
Well, I understand why. I mean, we've covered the 5980 before at What's on Watches, and they actually, in my opinion, with this having the solid gold bracelet, it is the best Nautilus bracelet that they do. I mean, it has some serious heft, and I think it really complements the variation in the finishes that you get there between the brushed and the polished.
That's it, yeah.
And I mean, the way that they do the chrono function is basically like a smaller watch face within a watch face, right. And it's just absolutely fantastic. And I mean, for a first Nautilus, again, what a great place to start. You've done a fantastic job. And then you also acquired you went for the other sports model as well. You got the Aquanaut also.
I did, yeah. So I've now got the Aquanaut, so the larger watch Aquanaut again.
Just over 42 mil compared
Yeah.
to 40.5 on these.
Good sports model, and again, where it's so comfortable on that
Yeah.
rubber Aquanaut strap.
And the dial on this, I mean, I really like the green because obviously people with the finishing on the dial, people say it looks like a grenade. And when you've got the green dial, it really does look like a grenade. But actually, I was going to say we've covered this in a video before, but that video never actually saw the light of day because we had the audio issues, so I won't say that. But we've spoke about this before, and slightly controversially, I prefer the Aquanaut to the Nautilus.
Yeah.
Again, in the chrono function and in the three-hand version, I really like how there's slimmer profile on the three-hand version particularly. But the green dial on this is fantastic, and it really does have that grenade look.
It does, yeah.
And it's got the more traditional chronograph approach to it.
Yeah, and I think, the dial and the finishing of them, colour-wise, when you're talking about the green, goes on to the next one, the Grand Comp here. So the Grand Comp I picked up next, and this for me is, it's a watch. It's somebody who understands watches, understands. It's not something that your everyday non-watch collector would even realise.
Well, to the untrained eye, it's just another moon phase model.
Yeah.
But then when you actually look at it, you realise it's a perpetual calendar.
Exactly.
And that's when it really that is a true grand complication, because we know how good Patek are at doing perpetual calendars. It's what they're most famous for.
And with the salmon in different lights, with the numerals, it's just such a beautiful watch.
And then this came next, and then this is a wow piece. Well, actually, let's comment on this one that's on your wrist, because I believe you've just picked this one up.
So
this
that's
is
right.
Brand new.
When I picked up the 5980, Patek had just released the rose gold 5990. Okay. Now, and it was really interesting to compare the two. And I loved the dial of the 5990, but I loved the kind of, it was an older, the black of the shaded grey of the 5980. But that really dragged me into the 5990 fold and looking at that. And I then had aspirations to pick up a stainless Nautilus, a stainless 5990. And you're right, it has just arrived. So that is
I'll be very gentle with it then.
my latest acquisition.
And then we come to pretty much the most incredible watch we've seen today.
So this is I saw this watch at an event, at a Patek event. And I remember seeing it in this glass cabinet, and it had the lights, the jeweler's lights in the cabinet shining down on these baguette diamonds around the bezel. I thought, wow, that is just absolutely beautiful, but I'll never wear it, was the exact line I said to Amy, my partner, who was with me. I was like, I love that, but I'll never wear it. Obviously, she immediately said, well, I'd wear it, thinking, go on, take that.
She knew what to say,
And, but it kind of sowed a little seed in my head of, do you know what? I really like that. Where I'm not a jewelry. Obviously, you could say I'm not a jewelry man, but I'll wear a watch. But I'm not a diamond man. I wouldn't wear diamonds anywhere else, and I don't think many men do. Well, but some men love diamonds. Don't get me wrong, but I never saw me as a diamond man.
Well, I remember this. You were wearing this the
right.
first time we met, and I have to admit, it did immediately catch my eye. Being a watch guy, I remember you sat down, and I was like, "Oh, okay,
yeah.
This is a serious collector, because this isn't the sort of piece you buy on a whim."
But and then as that time went on, I warmed. I went to 3 or 4 more events, and I kept getting drawn to this one cabinet. Time just marched on and marched on and marched on, and I was offered it. Yeah. And I thought, do you know what? Things are going well at in my business and what have you. Do you know what? I'm going to take that. Yeah. And since I've bought it, I've literally worn that as a daily. Yeah. I've worn a watch with over 6 carat of diamond as I
was going to say, because you've got the baguettes on the markers. You've got just shy, I believe, of 3.5 in the bezel, and then also you've got a full baguette. Encrusted clasp as well, so they haven't shied away from the diamonds. And I mean, this, to wrap up on, is a fantastic way, realistically, to celebrate your collection. I mean, I think it's fair to say you've pretty much completed it. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I don't know where you could go from here, but I can imagine you've already got some pieces in mind. I think we've already had a conversation maybe about 1 or 2. But I really appreciate you coming down today, Rich, and a massive thank you to Sherburn Aero Club as well for letting us sit in this hangar and tie in your military background. People want to find out more about yourself and Pagoda. Where do they need to go? Yeah, please do follow. I'm on Instagram, social media, rich.liddle, and Pagoda. Please do go and support the brand at Pagoda Watches, again on all social media platforms, and have a little look into the history. And I think for me, when you say where to go next, I'm very much, hence why we touch bases.
my journey really is very much going historical now, true
Yeah.
historical watches, a lot of the earlier watches. So I love the modern pieces, but very much I'm erring towards that historical thing. And I think with Pagoda, like I say, at Pagoda Watches, the history behind it is something that,
Yeah.
that is so important. And actually, when you delve into it and realize the history behind the name, what those units have done, where they've done it, why they've done it, and how they've done it, is a fascinating story.
It is an incredible story, and it's, you know, it's great to see a brand with that background getting the recognition it deserves. And like I say, if you need them vintage pieces, I'm sure we can help you out.
I'm sure we'll.
Thank you very much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure that you check out whatsonwatches.co.uk for your next watch. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.